Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. I do want to let you know that I'm a little bit under the weather. It's been like that for a few days now, but I am pushing through, as I know that many of you have pushed through when you have faced similar circumstances. So I am here and I'm excited because my guest today is Jeannette Roberes. She is an author, speech pathologist, software engineer, and educator, so she wears many hats. She has spoken in over 40 countries and has earned recognition in the Washington Post and the U.S. News and World Report, among other media acknowledgments. And with her technology and education expertise, she now empowers those with special abilities, particularly those with dyslexia, to pursue employment in the tech industry. And she's here to tell us why.
Millions of kids struggle with learning, processing, and social emotional difficulties. These challenges interfere with their ability to reach their full potential. Dr. Karen Wilson is here to help. Her extensive background in pediatric neuropsychology and higher education have prepared her for this unique mission. Listen as she delivers content to inform, educate, and empower parents and educators. This will enable you to identify challenges that kids face and get them on the road to achieving their full potential. This is Diverse Thinking, Different Learning by Child Nexus.
Hi, Jeannette. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I feel very welcome. I know this has been long overdue, so I am excited to connect with you.
I'm excited too. I'm glad that we finally made it happen.
But life has been happening all around us. So,
oh my gosh,
the fact
I know
that the fact that we finally made this happen is a testament.
Absolutely. I was persistent and you were persistent because I had you on my to-do list. I'm like, I have to circle back with her. And then you reached out to me and I'm like, yes, we can get this on the schedule. So thank you.
And we were on the same wavelength.
Yes, I'm so glad that we connected. And I think we share a connection with Sandy from Smiles for Speech.
We do.
Yes, you're on the board, right?
I am actually a board member, yes. And I work in the technical and digital capacity. So I am all hands on with creating partnerships for Smiles for Speech that enable us to utilize different technology products and services. And I'm the go-to person for insight on new technology that we can utilize. So that is primarily my role. And I've done some traveling with Smiles for Speech as well. So I had the fortunate opportunity to visit Ghana and Kenya
to
do a needs assessment. Yes, it was a fabulous trip. And I did a needs assessment with the team to really scout out some different opportunities and programs that could utilize our services. So for those who are listening, Smiles for Speech is a nonprofit that provides therapeutic services to under-resourced communities that represent majority Black and Brown populations.
Absolutely. And we had Sandy on the podcast a while back talking about the amazing work that they're doing. And when I saw that you both were connected, I was just so excited because, you're both doing really great work. It's really important. And, you are a speech pathologist, a software engineer, and a dyslexic advocate. How do those experiences intersect?
Great question. So I began my career as a speech language pathologist, and I found the work to be extraordinarily just profound. I worked across the K through 12 spectrum, and what I found is that a lot of teachers would come to me to inquire about dyslexia. They would ask whether that was something that was in my scope of practice. And at the time, I didn't think it was. But after getting so many questions, it definitely prompted me to consider how I could be a role player or an authority in this particular space. So that's when I started doing some research and looking into certifications that would be helpful for me. And then I started to embody that role as a dyslexia advocate. So after getting about 10,000 plus hours in that space, I felt like I was confident enough to provide thought leadership around dyslexia and start assessing, identifying, and diagnosing. So that is the dyslexia part. The the software engineering part is a little more tricky because it all came about because I moved from Mississippi to Michigan. And when I moved to Michigan, I was really trying to search for myself, trying to find um, ways in which I could recreate myself. It was through a divorce and some other, messy personal issues that came about. And I really was at a place where I wanted to tap in to my interests, and I wanted to see how I could utilize these interests as maybe a stepping stone to propel me towards a new pathway. So in that, I decided to enroll in a coding bootcamp. The coding bootcamp was something that I took on because I thought that this would be a great way for me to look into technology and be on the forefront of creating websites, developing apps, and things of that nature. So that is what I did for probably 3 or 4 years. And somehow or another, my work as a speech pathologist kept calling me. So I was kind of like dangling between the two for a while. Like, I love this work, but I also love this work. And it helped me to see that we can be multi passionate, we can be multi hyphenate as it relates to our interests. I think that so many of us find that we're supposed to stick to a script and stick to these norms for our careers and occupations. But this helped me to see that you could do anything, if you have a true interest in it.
I love that. I love the whole idea of being multi-passionate, because I think when you go through that professional training for, to be a speech language pathologist, or in my case, a neuropsychologist, it's like you have these buckets of career paths that you can kind of go into. And, we're not limited by that. There's so many other opportunities if we think about being multi-passionate.
Agreed. I would highly agree with your statement. I think that in the past, we've seen our parents and grandparents work one job all of their lives and they retire from that job. And so subconsciously, we think that that's how things are supposed to be, that's how they're supposed to play out. But it's a new day and age. And I think if anything, that pandemic definitely showed us that hey, you got one life to live and you may have multiple interests, so you need to choose whether you're going to just go down this narrow road that focuses on one interest, or whether you're going to brighten and broaden rather your lane that you're in.
Yes. And I just love that you can leverage the experiences that you have. I mean, you can use your experiences and leverage those experiences as a speech pathologist and your new interest in software engineering to really carve out a niche path, which really continues to serve the population of kids and adults who think and learn differently.
Agreed. So my focus now is primarily on helping technology companies see the value in hiring neurodiverse individuals and creating a culture where those individuals belong and they feel that they can identify with their current, culture at work.
Right. And when you talk about kind of this navigating this world as a dyslexic advocate, particularly as it relates to technology, I just feel like you're in the perfect position. Again, leveraging your experience as a speech language pathologist, because you were in the position to identify children at risk for dyslexia
And then you get, those thousands of hours working in that space, and you realize the boundless potential of individuals with dyslexia. And technology, it seems, can assist those individuals with demonstrating what it is that they know, even if they're struggling with this language-based disorder. And for those who may not be familiar with dyslexia, it's a language-based disorder which results in, an unexpected difficulty in learning to read and spell. And it's interesting because unless you're in this space, it's really hard to understand how complex reading is. It requires your brain to do a number of different things, connect letters to sounds, put those sounds in the right order, put those words into sentences and paragraphs that we can read and understand. And we may think that difficulties in that space would limit people in terms of their career choices, but that's not what you're saying. You're saying dyslexic narratives matter in tech. So why do they? And tell us about that.
Yeah, my book really dives into how employers can create accessible workspaces for those with dyslexia. And it also talks about how those with dyslexia can use their perceptual thinking, their outside of the box thinking, their empathetic way of approaching problem solving, how they can use those things to really elevate the tech that we currently have, and how they can use those gifts and characteristics that commonly are associated with dyslexia to help us create more sustainable technology, if that makes any sense.
That makes absolute sense. It absolutely sense because I'm on the assessment end, and so I'm often assessing for dyslexia. But while I'm doing that, I'm identifying a number of strengths in individuals with dyslexia, and that is so important to be able to kind of harness those talents, those gifts, and those strengths. And sounds like what you're saying is that they can use those gifts to really excel in the tech industry. And so, how do individuals who identify as dyslexic harness those gifts? What do you tell them?
So it's really a mind thing. And unfortunate enough, we run into a lot of instructors and educators who are not very privy to what dyslexia is. And that causes a lot of issues as they're relaying messages to their students. And they are oftentimes providing their students with such a negative experience that they are not really fulfilled. They're starting to doubt their abilities. They're starting to doubt their place in the classroom, or even more, their place in society. So it starts really with having educators and having advocates, having parents that support your diagnosis. And that will provide individuals with the self-awareness and the self-esteem that they need to move forward confidently. I cannot stress that enough, that confidence is a key. It is a certain point of knowing that I belong. And not only do I belong, but my narrative is important. And even further, that my narrative will help open doors and keep the doors open for people behind me.
Absolutely. And I think that is so important, that mindset, that belief in yourself and your abilities, even if you're struggling in a particular area, that you do have, strengths and talents that you bring to the world that can benefit other people, and to lean into that. Because so often, we pathologize a lot of these difficulties, and students I see feel less than and embarrassed by, their struggles, when we should be providing them with the support that they need to excel, and then really identifying those strengths so they can lean into those strengths and gifts that they have.
I would say that I totally concur with your statement. I paused to make you a little weary, to think like, what is she going to say? But yeah, I totally agree. And I would say that that confidence is such a big It's just huge. It is really huge. I know that I've worked in spaces where, you would ask a child to read a passage, or even a sentence, and they may just cry because not only are they having difficulties with decoding, um, but they also have some anxiety there. So that builds a layer of contempt, and for them not to want to do those things. And if you have horrible experiences like this throughout your schooling, then when you become an adult, you certainly don't think that your voice really matters when you are looking for a career or when you're interviewing with a company. You don't feel like you belong there immediately. You may feel like, hey, this is a job that's just going to get me by. But again, we want to really tap into our interests. We want to work in spaces where we're interested in those spaces so we can make an impact. And not only that, but as we're starting to see, these jobs that exist are very rigid for people. They have the structure that's in place, and it could have been in place for 100 years, and they expect everybody to just fall in line. It's almost like an assembly in all the work that you do. So you want to make sure you're pouring into a space that you have interest in. And in order to be comfortable with that interest, you have to have a level of confidence in yourself.
Absolutely. And I think that starts early on with helping kids develop that confidence. And part of that confidence comes from, becoming better at the thing that's harder for you. And we know that dyslexia is treated with systematic and direct instruction, phonemic awareness, spelling, reading sight words, vocabulary work, reading comprehension strategies, fluency training. But we also know that technology can be helpful. And are there any favorite tools that you recommend for students with dyslexia that will help them build the skills and become more fluent? So when they're at that place where they're looking for a job, they will be ready.
I would say any tools that make you work smarter and not harder. And from what we've seen, a lot of dyslexic students find value in having text read to them so that they can spend time comprehending, opposed to trying to encode, and comprehend all at the same time. They'll likely miss that message. So any tool that can provide you a specific ability as far as reading something to you, or helping you take notes by recording some snippets, and it types it out for you. So again, you're not focused on those little factors, but you're looking at that bigger picture. So to not be biased and specify which products to use, because I'm
Yes.
not being compensated by any of these companies.
Right.
I would say any opportunity to have something read to you or to have something do the typing for you is going to be extremely helpful. I also think along the lines of organizations that allow for their technology products to have a level of ease when you're utilizing them, so that you can get those foundational skills squared away, would be really essential.
And that whether a person with dyslexia ends up in tech or another career, what I'm hearing from this conversation is that having a supportive environment, that really promotes educational, professional progress, really enables dyslexic individuals to thrive and reach their full potential. And in addition to support, individuals with dyslexia should have, it sounds like, accommodations, at school, in the workplace, and that will include the use of assistive technologies that you've described.
Yes, I think that a lot of people have this misguided opinion on assistive technologies, and they feel like they're helping them to cheat. But I often say, it levels that playing field. It gives the opportunity to meet their peers where they are, as it relates to, benchmarks and milestones.
I absolutely agree. And oftentimes that's an important conversation to have with parents because, sometimes the parents are reluctant to have their kids use that technology, and the students themselves have to be convinced that it's okay to use because, like you said, they think of it as cheating when in fact, just like you said, it's really laying the playing field. It's allowing them to access information. If it's just, the text in a book, in instructions and directions, the ability to, again, demonstrate what it is that you know and show your full potential.
If I'll go on a limb, I will say that, this society that we live and thrive in is very meritocratic. And from what I've seen from the top down, is often, those who work the hardest, those are the ones who reap the best benefits. Even when we look at standardized testing, we're seeing that these assessments were created essentially to show that other races and other ethnicities were inferior to their counterparts. So I think we really have to delete, backspace, that whole concept of if you work the hardest, you'll get the best results, because that is not the case for those who have dyslexia. It's not about who works the hardest. I recall doing a interview with some individuals, and we were all sitting around talking about different topics as they came to mind. And that was one of the topics. There were a lot of people who were saying, no matter what your circumstances are, you have to work really hard. And then when you work really hard, then that's when and I think that that's really a cop out. I think that's the easy way to look at a situation, opposed to taking a more dynamic approach and understanding that it's not always about who works the hardest. It's about the layer of comprehension, the layer of understanding, the accessibility, the user friendliness. It's so much more than who works the hardest.
Absolutely. And I can think of so many kids who think and learn differently, who actually work harder than their peers who do not have those same types of struggles. So, and they don't reap the same benefits. They can be spending 2 hours on a homework assignment that takes their peers who do not struggle with learning or thinking differences, 30 minutes to do. So there really isn't a direct relationship between the extent to which you work hard and the outcome, particularly for kids with learning disabilities, learning differences, and processing struggles.
Yeah, I would just echo that. I think it's important that we look at the whole child. We understand their circumstances and where they are. I think that every student that walks into the proverbial classroom or whatever space they're inhabiting, we need to look beyond just the physical presence of that child and understand that that child has, possibly brothers and sisters. They could be the only child. They may be coming from a family that has, two parents, a family with one, a family where they're not necessarily seeing their actual family. They could be in an adoptive family. Like, it's so many different ways in which we need to embrace children at the onset, and let them know that all of their identities are valued, whether that means that they are, a person on the spectrum, or whether they have ADHD, whether they are encumbered by selective mutism. It's so many different ways in which we need to have our teachers be prepared to embrace all of these different power dynamics that come into play when we are working with students, because they may have some privileges, they may have some oppressions, and that needs to be taken all into account as we are working with students. And even more so, as with the work that I do with tech companies, companies need to be able to embrace all people as they're coming in. You don't know what their family life is. You don't know what what their pronouns are. You don't know how they identify in this world. You're not really very aware of some of the powers that they possess and some of the oppressions. So we need to start going back to that blank canvas and just really just enjoying people and getting to unfold all of their layers with their help instead of just creating these very stagnant cookie cutter positions or roles in the classroom and in the workplace for them.
Absolutely. I mean, I think what you're doing is you're helping to educate the public because there are so many misconceptions about dyslexia, about language-based learning challenges, and there are a lot of preconceived notions about what those individuals can't do when in fact those individuals have, again, like we've been saying, so many unique abilities and so many strengths that they bring to the table. And I think it's helping others, whether it be an employer or teachers, understand, and understand the strengths of these individuals and understand when there are challenges, there are supports that we can put in place to help individuals thrive. And oftentimes when we do that, everyone benefits. Not only the individuals or the students with dyslexia, but everybody benefits when we have that approach. And I just feel like your unique experiences and perspectives on students with language-based disorders like dyslexia are so important. All of the voices of people who are working with kids who think differently, learn differently, who recognize their uniqueness and their strengths and the gifts that they bring. It's important for us to get that message out so that they know that they can do whatever they want. If they want a career in tech, they can absolutely have one. And then the same goes for employers. They have to know that they can bring in people into their ecosystem who have learning challenges, but also have those unique abilities.
I love how you said that. That definitely sums up my thoughts on the matter because I want people to be aware. I want everyone to understand that each and every individual with language-based learning disabilities or disorders can truly be an asset, to the classroom. They can be an asset to the workplace. It's just a matter of us investing time in getting to know those individuals and kind of working backwards in that matter, getting to know them and then working at their level accordingly.
Absolutely. And again, when the right supports are in place, we can see so many strengths come through, and those children, those adolescents, those adults can absolutely thrive. And I just want to thank you so much for what you're doing to empower those students with learning challenges, particularly those language-based learning disorders, dyslexia, really empowering them to embrace their abilities and, if they want to pursue a career in tech. So thank you so much for all that you're doing.
Thank you very much for your acknowledgement. I really appreciate hearing from another professional with like minds and who is on that other end of that spectrum where you're assessing and providing helpful means of people getting those labels. We don't talk enough about how it's important to know what is the root cause, what is the issue. And having that label can help you as you are navigating through society and whatever that looks like for you, whether that's a tech company or whether that's a healthcare company, which in my mind, all companies are, are tech companies, or they will be at some point.
Absolutely. Jeanette, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. I'm going to absolutely put a link to your book in the show notes because I think it's really important. It's an important read for individuals with dyslexia and for parents who have kids with dyslexia who are showing an interest in tech. And so many are. Every kid I know is on an iPad or some device. So there's interest there. But if they can channel that interest into a career, how amazing would that be?
It would be so great.
Thank you so much, Jeanette.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. I want to let you know that we have something very exciting coming up. We know that knowledge and support are essential to a child's overall well-being. That's why we do this podcast. But we at Child Nexus are planning to offer virtual learning groups for parents. These groups will meet virtually for 8 sessions, and all meetings will be recorded and housed in a virtual library so you can refer back. We're going to have group leaders that'll combine written content, videos, and activities to really help further parents' understanding of specific topics related to ADHD, dyslexia, language disorders, autism spectrum disorder, anxiety, depression. And we want other parents and caregivers in the groups to serve as an additional support system for group members. So topics for each session will include getting an assessment, making sense of reports, understanding the diagnosis, treatment and intervention options, to medicate or not to medicate, embracing the whole child, more than just a diagnosis, social and emotional factors that impact my child's learning, getting appropriate educational and emotional support for my child, how to advocate for my child, pushing against stigma of learning differences and mental health challenges, and finding your tribe. If this seems like it's something that would be interesting to you or to someone you know, please sign up for our newsletter and we will let you know when we launch. Go to childnexus.com and sign up for our newsletter. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to Diverse Thinking, Different Learning by Child Nexus. For more resources, visit us online at childnexus.com.